In a small village nestled in the rolling green hills of southeast England, way back in the year 1899, stood a grand old house. It was a house filled with warmth and laughter, for it was home to a family with 2 young children. There was a bright-eyed boy of 6, full of endless curiosity, and his little sister, a sweet girl of 4, with a smile that could melt the winter snow. Their days were filled with adventures in the garden and cozy evenings by the fireplace, listening to their father's stories. But of all the days in the year, there was one they looked forward to more than any other: Christmas Eve. This Christmas Eve was particularly special. A thick blanket of fresh snow covered the village, making everything look like a picture on a postcard. Inside the big house, the air was thick with the scent of pine needles from the magnificent Christmas tree and the sweet aroma of gingerbread cookies their mother had baked. The children had spent the day helping decorate, their small hands carefully placing shiny baubles and looping tinsel around the branches. Now, as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, the house was aglow with the soft, warm light of candles and the twinkling lights on the tree. After a hearty supper, their parents told them it was time for bed. "Now, you 2, their mother said with a gentle smile. "Santa won't come until you're fast asleep." The children nodded, their eyes sparkling with anticipation. They promised to be good, gave their parents big hugs and kisses, and scampered up the winding staircase to their shared bedroom. They changed into their flannel pajamas, brushed their teeth, and hopped into their beds, pulling the thick quilts up to their chins. Their father came in to tuck them in, telling them one last short story about a brave little reindeer. "Good night, little ones," he whispered, dimming the lamp before closing the door softly behind him. But sleep was the furthest thing from their minds. The boy, whose name was Leo, and his sister Clara were far too excited. They lay in the darkness, listening. They heard the familiar creaks of the old house, the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, and the soft murmur of their parents' voices downstairs. They waited and waited, whispering to each other about all the wonderful toys they hoped to find under the tree in the morning. Leo imagined a shiny new train set, while Clara dreamed of a beautiful doll with hair just like hers. An hour felt like a lifetime. Finally, the house fell completely silent. The only sound was the gentle sigh of the wind outside. Leo peeked over at his sister's bed. "Clara," he whispered, "are you awake?" A tiny voice replied from the darkness. "Yes, is it time?" Leo slid out of his bed, his bare feet making no sound on the wooden floor. "I think they're asleep," he said. "Let's go see the tree one more time." Clara didn't need to be asked twice. She slipped out of her bed and took her brother's hand. Together, moving like little spies on a secret mission, they tiptoed out of their room and crept silently along the upstairs hallway. The moon was bright, casting long shadows through the tall windows on the landing. They paused at the top of the grand staircase, peering down into the living room below. It was bathed in a magical silvery glow. And there it stood, the Christmas tree, even more magnificent in the quiet of the night. Its lights twinkled like 1,000 captured stars, and the ornaments shimmered mysteriously in the moonlight. Holding their breath, they made their way down the stairs, one careful step at a time, their hearts thumping with a mixture of excitement and a tiny bit of fear. They didn't want to get caught, but the pull of the magical tree was too strong to resist. They reached the bottom of the stairs and stood in awe. In the stillness, the tree seemed alive, a silent, glittering giant watching over the sleeping house. They tiptoed closer, their eyes wide with wonder, examining the familiar ornaments that now looked entirely new in the enchanting light. There was the glass bird their grandmother had given them, the handmade paper chains they had glued together, and the little wooden soldiers standing at attention on the branches. And at the very, very top, right next to the ceiling, sat the most special ornament of all, the Christmas tree fairy. She was beautiful, with delicate sparkling wings and a dress that seemed woven from moonlight itself. She held a tiny silver wand and had a serene smile on her painted face. The children sat down on the soft rug in front of the tree, huddled together for warmth and courage. They watched the clock on the mantelpiece, its long hand inching closer and closer to the number 12. The house was so quiet they could hear each other breathe. 10 minutes to midnight. 5 minutes. 1 minute. As the grandfather clock in the hall began to chime, announcing the arrival of midnight, something incredible happened. On the very first stroke of the clock, a brilliant flash of light, brighter than any of the tree's own lights, burst from the top of the tree. The children gasped and shielded their eyes. When they looked again, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The fairy at the top of the tree was moving. She wasn't a painted doll anymore. She stretched her glittering wings, which fluttered like a hummingbird's, and the serene smile on her face had become a real, living smile. She was alive! Leo and Clara stared, their mouths wide open in astonishment. The little fairy looked down at them, her eyes twinkling with mischief, and gave them a tiny, knowing wink. Then she took a graceful leap off her perch. Instead of falling, she floated. She began to dance down the tree, her movements as light and airy as a snowflake. She twirled from branch to branch, her tiny feet barely touching the pine needles. As she danced, a trail of shimmering gold dust followed her, sparkling in the moonlight before vanishing into the air. She pirouetted on a shiny red bauble, making it spin gently, and then she slid down a long strand of silver tinsel like it was a slide at the playground. The children watched, completely mesmerized. It was the most magical thing they had ever seen. The room seemed to be filled with a faint tinkling music that only they could hear. The fairy reached the lowest branch and then fluttered gently to the floor. She did a little curtsy to the two astonished children before beginning another dance, this time on the rug. She spun and leaped, her tiny form a blur of silver and gold. She danced around the presents, peeking at the tags and giving them a little tap with her wand. A soft glow would emanate from each present she touched before fading away. She danced with the shadows, playing a game of tag with the moonbeams slanting across the floor. Leo and Clara didn't dare move or make a sound, afraid they might break the spell. After dancing all around the base of the tree, the fairy began her journey back up. But this time, she took a different path. She seemed to be looking for something. She floated past the glass bird and the paper chains, her tiny head turning from side to side. Then she stopped. Her eyes had settled on a particular ornament hanging from a sturdy branch. It was a little wooden drummer boy, painted in a smart red and blue uniform, with two tiny drumsticks in his hands. He was a simple toy, but one Clara particularly loved. The fairy floated right in front of him, hovering in the air for a moment as if studying him. Then, she did something that made Clara's heart give a little flutter. The fairy leaned in close to the wooden drummer boy. With the utmost gentleness, she gave his little painted cheek a sweet, tender kiss. For a fleeting second, it seemed to Leo and Clara that the drummer boy's wooden cheeks flushed a brighter shade of red. The fairy smiled, a soft and loving smile, and then with another twirl, she continued her graceful dance back up towards the top of the tree. She soared higher and higher, a whirlwind of light and magic, until she reached her place at the very peak. She settled back into her original position, her sparkling wings folding neatly behind her. Her wand was held perfectly still, and the lively, mischievous expression on her face softened back into that serene, painted smile. The trail of gold dust faded completely, and the faint, tinkling music ceased. The magic was over. She was just an ornament again. The children sat in stunned silence for a long moment, the only movement being the gentle twinkle of the tree lights. Had they imagined it all? They looked at each other, their wide eyes asking the same question. But they both knew. They knew what they had seen was real. It was their own special Christmas secret. Slowly, quietly, they got up and, hand in hand, tiptoed back up the stairs to their beds, their hearts full of a new kind of Christmas magic. Thank you so much for watching this special Christmas story. We hope it brought a little bit of magic to your day. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more heartwarming tales. From our family to yours, we wish you a very Merry Christmas. See you next time.